Okay, hopefully this is working. So as you log in, just let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. And I do have a window open, but it's the furthest window from me. So hopefully you can hear me anyways, but just let me know if it's too loud because I do live right next to a highway. And let me know how it sounds, how it looks. I'm gonna pull up the comments on my screen. All right, so a few people logging in. So whenever, and I know there's a little bit of a delay. So just whenever you do hear something or see something, let me know. All right. Thanks, Doug. I'm getting thumbprints. Sounds good from YouTube. Sounds good from Facebook. That is what I like to hear. Awesome. So that means, oh, good. It means everything is working on the first go. This is unheard of. Okay. So that means I can get rid of this. I don't have to swap. Excellent. Okay. What are we doing? All right. We are talking about, you've got a fast dog, or your dog's just faster than you are, which is kind of what we want, right? Fast is relative. And so we all kind of have our own, I don't know, definition of what's a really fast dog, because really fast is relative to your own speed, right? Not just, I'm not talking about really fast when stacked up against other really fast dogs and how fast your dog is compared to other dogs. I'm talking about how fast your dog is compared to you. That's the challenge I want to talk about today. And like I said, the fun part about this is the same things that I would do to help train a human at getting better handling their super fast dog, I would use to train the less speedy dogs to go faster. Okay. So bear with me. So it really doesn't matter why you're here. If you have a dog that you want to increase the speed, or if you have a dog that is way faster than you are, you're in the right place. It's a fact that the more speed that you have, the more of a challenge it's going to be on time. Because the faster the dog is going, the faster they want the information, the sooner they want the information. All dogs want the information at the same time, but the faster the dog is going, the faster that moment comes up in the timing loop, in the connection loop. So I've talked about those concepts at some point in these lives. I promise. I'm not totally sure which ones or how to search for said things, but I talk about connection loop and timing loop a lot. I think I did one specifically on timing of cues, or maybe it was on jumping. But if you search the group, I did like a whole thing on a whiteboard, and it was, you know, my masterpiece. It's fantastic that you mentioned that your dog moves faster than your brain, because that's one of the key things we need to be working on doing, is anticipating our dogs. Okay. I want to anticipate my dog's movements so that I can be prepared for them, so that I can rehearse what my dog will need from me. Okay. We've talked about planning runs on one of these chats before. So the whiteboard masterpieces are, wow, they're special. I don't draw. I do hand letter, sort of. It's not like brilliant, but that was one of my pandemic things, was hand lettering. So maybe my obstacle drawing might improve. Probably not. So we want to be able to anticipate our movements. And that's why I bring up the timing loop and the connection loop. And all of the things that I talk about all of the time about how we need our dogs to have the skills of commitment and keeping commitment, that all applies here. Like, I know I think every week, all of the talks, all of the things that I want to talk about always apply. And that's the complex part of agility, is that there are a lot of pieces here. So don't take this one talk as these are the only things you need to do, because you also have to make sure that you have all those other pieces in play, right? That the dog knows how to commit, knows how to keep commitment, because and knows how to follow the handling. If you have those three things, then you can make sure that your timing loop and your connection loop is spot on, because those things are critical, okay? But they're not the focus of tonight's conversation. The first tip for how to keep up with your super fast dog, remember, speed is relative to your own speed. And it's also what I would do for speeding up slower dogs, is to stop trying to outrun them. Stop trying. Stop trying to run faster than they are running. Stop trying to race them somewhere. Accept that you are not faster than they are. And it's okay, because no one's timing you. They're timing the dog. You don't have to be fast. You just have to be timely with your information. So that is step one. Stop trying to outrun them. And so what I mean by that is embrace walking. Try agility at a walk. Try running your next sequence, working through your next sequence without running. What does your handling look like when you're not trying to chase them down? When you're not rushing from point A to point B? And then on the flip side of that, the less speedy dogs, what does your handling look like for them when they have to go to the obstacles on their own? What does it look like when you're not trying to encourage them to go faster with your own speed? Okay, so we're going to play around with that. So practicing sprints can come off the list. We're going to talk about if you want to go faster. We're going to talk about that later, but I don't think that's where you should start. I think you should start with accepting that your dog is wicked fast, or that you would like your dog to be wicked fast. And they need to learn how to, whether it's because they're super fast or not as super fast, they need to learn how to move through the course kind of on their own, with their own bodies, and in a way that they feel comfortable going. So then when you take the pressure off of yourself of having to be everywhere, you'll actually find that your timing improves a ton, because now you're not rushing. Is the number one thing that I see when we are panicked and rushing is that we drop connection with the dog. And without connection, you don't have good timing. It's impossible. Because if you don't know where the dog is, you don't know when to give them the information. So the first step is to remove the panic, remove the rushing, stop running. Okay? You with me? So that's going to give you the opportunity to really see, can you have good timing with this dog? Do you need to be rushing everywhere to be on time with this dog? And if you have a less speedy dog, the dog will actually, it relieves some of that pressure. So it's counterintuitive completely. It's the opposite of what agility people at large have been told for the last 30 years, is that running faster is the answer for both of these problems. And I'm saying maybe it's not. If it was the answer to all of these problems, it would be working. But running faster has its limits, right? I think it has its limitations. We're going to talk about when running faster is an option later. But when we take away the pressure, so when we're working with those less speedy dogs, because I want to be clear on that, running faster to get them to go faster can, in fact, be pressure. I've mentioned the analogy of going running with someone else. So for instance, when I go running with my partner who's 6'4", it's not all that reinforcing because he can go a lot faster than I can. And there's pressure to try and keep up with him. And it actually makes running less fun. But if you were just walking behind me, I could run freely. I could run at my own pace, and I would actually probably run faster for longer. Turns out we have a system. It's fine. He can pace me. That also works. But do you get what I'm saying? So removing the running when you have a super fast dog takes the pressure off of you. And when you have a not so fast dog, it takes the pressure off of them. And you have a good point, Doug. Sometimes putting that extra pressure, that extra amount of motion and moving forward can cause a lot of problems, right? It can cause the dogs that are motion sensitive to completely go into handler focus and stop focusing on the task at hand, which is jumping, which is staying in the weave poles, which is hitting their contacts and things like that. So that's an excellent point, that sometimes motion is a huge distraction. So running faster isn't always the answer. And it's certainly not a helpful solution, is it? I'm going to passion talk a little bit here, in that if that is the solution you are being given, I need you to push back on that, because it's not a solution. It's an option. It doesn't solve the problem. I think running faster deals with the current symptoms in that moment, but it doesn't solve the problem. So I'm sure more passion will fly out of my mouth as I continue. But once you've stopped trying to rush around and panic, and you can take a step back and see, do I have good timing? Now we're going to focus on the skills that you need to be able to get to the positions that you want to be in. So I want you to put your effort into training independent obstacle performances, so that when you send your dog to the weave poles, you don't have to stay with the dog in the weaves, that you can just move to the next position on course where you are needed. When you put the dog on the dog walk, you can go where you are needed. When you send the dog to the tunnel, you don't have to take the dog to the tunnel. So building independent obstacle performances is going to give you the time that you are looking for on course. And your training time is much better spent on those obstacle skills than just trying to run the sequence faster and faster and faster, right? So training your obstacle skills, that's a solution to that whole problem. Running faster only treats the symptoms in the moment. So there's a comment here about this works on courses with turns. Beginning a dog to run an extension when I'm 3 obstacles behind is hard for me. So this is the same skill. If that's something that happens often and you need that to be trained, so keeping the dog in extension when you're 3 obstacles behind, I would put that on a verbal cue that is independent, just like your weave holes or just like your contacts. So, and that's going to be individual for every single team. So you need that skill. So I would put my time and effort into training that particular skill, and also thinking about your positions on course so that you maybe don't have to be 3 obstacles behind, but not because you are just running faster, because you are handling smarter. Question: what about when you have a dog that can take off at any point faster but then slows down to trot, or vice versa? Never know what speed to prep for. So it's a little bit different when we're talking about a dog that's not consistent in their speed. But usually when the dog has shown me that they can go fast but doesn't always go fast, I still go with the walking route, because they learn how to go fast separate from the handler. There could be a ton of reasons why the dog isn't going fast. So I can't totally say that that's what I would do for this particular dog. But when I get the feeling that the dog doesn't know that they're allowed to go faster than I am going, I walk. And I teach them how to go faster than I'm going. Because some dogs really do learn to pace their handlers. And if that's okay with you, then keep doing that. That's fine. But if that's not okay with you, I would back off your handling, your running speed, make sure that it's not pressure on the dog, and allow the dog to pass you really easily. Okay. Because when you focus on the skills needed so that you can move from point A to point B without having to necessarily run faster, you start to be able to anticipate what the dog is going to do and when they're going to do it and how they're going to do it. And I kind of mentioned that in the beginning, but when you have those skills, when you have consistent handling skills and a consistent handling system, and you understand the connection loop and you understand the timing loop, and your dog has the skills that it needs, then you are able to anticipate what the dog is going to be doing. And then you can be on time even when they are really, really fast. That is agility for me. When I compete, it's all about solving that puzzle and anticipating as much of their behavior as I can, so that I know exactly what's going to happen and I know when it's going to happen. So I'm prepared for it. If running your dog is still a surprise, like, oh my gosh, why are they out there? If that's a surprise to you, you're not quite there yet. And sometimes, again, taking away your speed gives you that ability to observe from a different perspective, gives you that ability to really see, oh, my dog lands there, and then he's looking at that obstacle, and then he's going in that direction. So also having a keen understanding of your dog's reality lines helps you predict. And when you can predict, you can anticipate, and your timing is better. But if you're reacting to everything in the moment, you won't be fast enough. So we do have to make sure those pieces are intact. Okay, I like to this is a very common phrase that we hear all the time: trust your dog, trust your training, blah blah blah. Knowing is better than trusting. It's greater than trusting. Knowing is greater than trusting. And I wrote it down on my notes to make sure I said this tonight. But it feels different to me. It might be the exact same, knowing or trusting, in your head. But to me, it's like a fact. It's not faith that oh, yep, I believe in my dog. It's not that to me. It's, I know my dog will take off here. I know my dog will land here. I know my dog will take those weave poles and be fine. Because when I know it, I can rely on it and I can commit to it more easily. So maybe that's a little bit of a mindset shift that you can explore. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, to reframe it that way. But knowing is greater than trusting, in my opinion. So when you're planning your course strategies, you should be predicting where your dog is at every single moment. And then when you run that plan, you're committed to that plan. If something goes wrong, you're legitimately surprised that it went wrong. And then you can explore why your prediction was off. Did something happen that you were not aware of? Because you don't know what you don't know. And that's fine, because every prediction that's a little bit off is an opportunity to learn and grow from that. Great. But you should be able to predict some things and plan those things. I don't know. Someone says, anything I care about, I feel better to know than to believe. Right? I'm also not a huge fan of surprises. I like to know what's going to happen. I like control over those reinforcers. We all like control over those reinforcers. So being able to see and predict things in our dogs and be prepared for them is a lot more satisfying than being surprised by them all the time. Excellent. I'm glad that you guys like it, because sometimes yeah, I read science. It's a little bit more science-y to me. Of course, it's sort of like this dance, and of course there is some nuances for each team, so it makes it kind of artsy. Each individual team can put their own flair on things, but really when we break it all down, it's just science. It's fact. They're going to do this, I'm going to do that. They're going to do A, I'm going to add B to that. We're going to create C, and it's going to be beautiful. Can it be because you're not communicating with your dog? Can you elaborate on that? Which piece? I've said a lot of things, so I'm not totally sure what you're referring to there. So just clarify that for me. So anticipate the dog. So we're going to take away your motion. Stop trying to outrun them. Stop running around panicking and not getting to where you need to be anyways, especially if the panic isn't helping you, right? I'm a little bit all over the place. When you're late, I don't know. I'm still not sure. So you're going to stop trying to outrun them. You're going to remove the panic. You're going to get really good at predicting their patterns, their lines, their jumping trajectories, things like that. Okay, yes. If you're giving the information late, yeah, I would say your connection loop is off, and that so when the connection loop is off, yeah, the communication is low. It's like when the connection loop is off, it's like only hearing every third word when you're on the phone with someone. We've had this problem in these lives. If you're not hearing what I'm saying, then you're not getting the information that you need to be able to respond to me appropriately. So then it's all a surprise, kind of like what just happened there, because I wasn't totally sure what you were referring to. Let's talk a little bit about, do you want to run faster? Because not everyone does, but some people do, and that's okay. All of these things that I've talked about so far still apply, and we still need those skills. And yeah, it's okay if you want to run faster, but do it to support the things that I've just talked about. Don't try to run faster to solve the problem, because I don't think that's the solution. because I am a recovering run up to every obstacle, touch every obstacle, get close to every obstacle. And I had dogs that didn't get frustrated with that. They were fine waiting for me. So I was still able to produce a lot of clear rounds, and I wasn't slow, so my dogs weren't slow. So it looked great. But then I couldn't level up. So then when I, went to a bigger event and I was getting creamed by, 2 or 3 seconds by the faster teams, but the humans weren't faster than I am, but they were stopping the clock before I was, is when that shift has to go, I'm not doing I'm not handling in a way that gets the most out of my dogs. So running faster doesn't always solve the problem you're looking for. I'm going to grab this comment and then we're going to keep talking about it. I always felt like I just didn't do a good job planning exactly how fast Sear was. I'd go for a front cross and he'd be too fast and I'd be in the wrong place, or I'd plan a rear when I could have been there for a front. So you needed more time to gather information. You needed to gather more information because that does happen. Right? In the beginning, we don't know for sure. So it's kind of like trial and error. We have to collect the evidence somehow. And I think this is a little bit of it's a mindset thing again. The very first mindset coach I ever went to, and they will remain nameless because they still teach. They didn't work for me because when they would use visualization, they weren't pulling from evidence. They would emphasize just visualize how you want it to happen. Visualize how you want it to happen. That doesn't work when we're talking about having another being with us, because they have to actually know the behavior and have rehearsed the behavior to be able to do the behavior. So visualizing how you want it to happen doesn't work unless you can pull from evidence that it's happened this way before. So all of these predictions, all of this anticipation of what the dog is going to do is compiled from months and years and thousands of agility runs worth of evidence. I'm not 100% with Shock, and she'll be 10. And so sometimes it takes longer. Some dogs you just click with right away. You can predict them. You know them like the back of your hand. Some dogs take a little bit longer to be able to predict and understand. But Smack's super easy. Oh, piece of cake. So many runs of those last 3 to 5 years. Boom, 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 boom. I knew exactly where every foot was going to fall. He rarely surprised me. That's the dream. But also Smack, that's like magic. A little bit. There's a little bit of luck involved in agility. So every team's process is going to look different. But when you visualize things and you're anticipating things, it should be based on evidence. And yeah, I'm sorry for saying sad things. You just needed more time. Okay. So Doug has a question about verbal information, stacking commands like over and then out. I personally don't. I think if it's part of your communication system and you're consistent with it and the dog is reacting appropriately to it, I don't view it as a problem. And we're going to unpack verbal cueing a ton next week, I think. But essentially with verbal cues, I want to make sure that everything I say is information that the dog needs to be listening to and can process. If you have a lot of verbal information that isn't relevant to the dog, or the dog doesn't know, or the dog doesn't listen to, or can't use if it's not important. So if it's the wrong verbal, they're going to start to tune it out. And then your verbals won't be useful because they won't be listening to them. So I want to make sure anytime I'm using verbal information, it's relevant and that the dog can react to it. People will tell me my dog is hard because it's your first dog and he's fast and he's obstacle jump and you're a green handler. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult combination to be new at agility and have a super fast dog. I'm gonna preach about it that you learn agility separate from your dog, that you work a lot on handler mechanics away from the dog, that you are consistent and fluent, and that you have a better idea of understanding your movements before you include the dog, because that's a recipe for frustration on both sides of the fence. I see it in both directions. When we have super fast dogs and super green handlers, there's a high chance of frustrating the dog because the information isn't coming quickly enough because you're still learning, right? And then we also have the dogs that are maybe not going so fast, but they're learning to just to keep going slow, right? Because the less speedy dogs reinforce the handlers who are still working things out and moving more slowly themselves, but they're getting it right. So it's reinforcing. So that team just learns to be slow together. So I'm getting up on my soapbox of training handlers separately than training dogs, which helps both types of dogs. Right. So you want to learn to run faster. It's fine if you do. I'm not a running expert. Running experts exist in the world. When I started competing with shock, it became very clear that running faster would be helpful. And in addition to all of those other things, making sure she has good obstacle skills, obstacle focus. She does have independent obstacle skills, so that helps. But then also being able to run faster means that I can get places sooner. And it means that if I'm faced with obstacles, straight lines, I can attempt to be not within 9 feet of her instead of 15 feet behind her, right? So running faster can be advantageous. Absolutely. It does not replace everything that I've already said. It shouldn't replace everything that I've already said. Running faster should be like the bonus. It should be like the icing or the sprinkles or whatever. Maybe the cake is bonus for you. I don't know. Maybe you're just there for the icing. You get the analogy. You can get a running coach. I got one. I learned how to run. Turns out I didn't know how to run. So that helped tremendously. Learning the individual mechanics of running. You can get and I wouldn't necessarily get a strength coach because you might be more stable, but stability doesn't necessarily make you faster. But if you're not fast because your balance is not that great, then maybe strength and stability is what you want to look into. There's also, obviously, I teach a handler mechanics class. It has nothing to do with fitness. It has nothing to do with strength training or balance training or anything like that. I don't think it can. I think it can help improve your speed to be fluent in these behaviors, because when you're thinking about how to do a front cross, you're automatically slower. When you're thinking about how to do a backside send, you're automatically slower. So yes, obviously improving your handler mechanics and getting really fluent in all of those handler movements throughout the course is going to improve your speed, I think. By how much? I have no idea. But it's certainly going to improve your communication. And if your communication improves, well, then your timing is probably going to improve. And that's what we're actually here for. Right? Right. there are sport-specific conditioning programs out there for dog sport handlers. We posted about one in the group. My friend Stacy Weeks, who runs Control Precision Flow. It's sport specific. She happens to have a background in all the things, right? Like lifting and dancing and Pilates. Like she has enough knowledge that can pull those things together for you. And maybe that's the path you want to take. But that's what I have. Those are my thoughts on this. And it's very loud. I don't know how I live here. I'm very noise sensitive. That's what I have. You can learn to run faster, but it should be a bonus. It should enhance your experience on the agility course, not be the solve to all your problems, I think. I feel kind of strongly about that because it will move the goalpost on you. You'll be like, all right, I'm going to run faster. Well, guess what? When you run faster, your dog is going to run faster, and then you're going to be in the same problem all over again. So running faster, I feel like has this like perfectionism goalpost attached to it, and it will just move the goalpost on you, and you won't be fast enough. And, you'll get faster and your dog will be like, oh, all right, they're faster now. Excellent. And then they're going to get faster. And now we're back at the same. Control Precision Flow. Stacy Weeks is her name. And that's kind of where I would go, probably. Like I said, running coaches, it was great for me. Running coach was great. Strength training is great for me, but that's about my life, mostly. It's definitely bleeding over, but let's be real. Agility handlers don't have to be Olympic athletes, and we don't have to be track stars. We don't. So if that's not how your version of agility looks, it's okay. Certainly okay with me. We have all these other ways to still be on time and still get to where we need to be. And yeah, if you are handling with more distance, the dog might require a little bit more obstacle focus. I talked about that in my webinar last week for FDSA, that every team's obstacle handler focus balance is going to be a tiny bit different based on that team's need. If you can be ahead of your dog and really, really fast and moving kind of to every single obstacle that you need your dog to take, and your dog never has to go do anything on their own, you don't have to build up the same amount of obstacle focus or obstacle independence as someone who's handling with more distance. I try to build up a pretty high level of obstacle focus or obstacle independence so that I don't have to run faster than my dog, so that I have the flexibility to go where I need to go and not put the pressure on myself to, oh man, this running point to this running point. When you look at a course map and you think, how the heck am I going to do this? I want to be able to fall back on my independent obstacle skills so that I can be like, boom, this is how I'm going to do it. I don't want to have to put the pressure on myself to, you just better run fast. It doesn't feel like a solution to me. Here I am back to passion talking. Does this make sense? Do we have questions? I'm kind of getting to the end of my notes, and I'm happy to talk for some more minutes, but that means you have to have questions to get me talking more. I'll give you guys a minute. But we can recap quickly. If you're running around, panicked, rushing, thinking you have to be everywhere and run faster than your dog, stop that. Make sure that you have really clear handling cues. Your connection loop is intact, your timing loop, you understand. And then take a step back. You're going to walk sequences and start to observe where the weaknesses are in your dog's skills. Because what you lack in speed can be gained through dog skills. 100%. Then we had the blind cross. So don't take your eyes off the dog to take your eyes off the dog. So let's talk about that. The connection loop just means that the dog has information at every point on the course. But there's points where once the dog has selected the obstacle, now it is their job to maintain commitment to that obstacle while you do whatever it is you need to do. And that includes techniques that break the connection, like head turns, like blind crosses. But if you are doing that in the time where your dog is intelligently ignoring you because they are engaged in something else, that's the moment to do it. If you are doing it constantly where they can't get the information, then there's a problem. Or if you're doing it, eventually they'll just ignore what your head is doing at all, and then you have a really big problem. Yeah, the walking thing, I might have posted these videos in the group a while back when we talked about distance handling on one of these chats. So search the group for walking agility, and I will add them to the Patreon page for sure. But basically when I'm walking a course and I intend to run, I plan my handling strategies and where I'm going to be based on my speed when I'm running. When I then back off and try walking agility, I plan my handling strategy based on my dog running full speed and me walking. And so then that means I can't get as close to all of the obstacles. I may have to send more in some areas to be able to get to the next critical position so that I can handle something, and so on and so on. But basically, you just change your perspective of walking is as fast as I can go. Because then you really, really start to look at the course of where do I need to be? Because when you're only walking, you can't be everywhere. And then that highlights what skills you need to install in your dog. If my dog can be super fast chasing a squirrel, does that mean he can do that in agility? So it means he possesses the mechanical skill to go fast. And then from there, when it comes to agility, it comes down to confidence and enjoyment of the game. So remember that every time we're training our dogs something, we're also training them how to feel. So if they're feeling confident and they're feeling like they're enjoying it, they're probably going to run faster. It's not going to look exactly the same, and it also depends a little bit on the size of the dog, because when they're jumping and climbing things, they're not in the same amount of extension or the same type of extension as they would be when they're chasing a squirrel. And the bigger the dog, the more different this is going to look. So yes, I like to see that the dogs go fast in other areas of their life, but I would actually, when I'm looking for what their speed might look like in agility, I'm looking at them out in a field running with themselves or running with other dogs, or maybe running on the beach or running in the woods. I'm looking at their speed there because that's more similar to the type of running that they're going to be doing on the agility course. When they're chasing a squirrel, it's more like lure coursing. And so it's not like I would never expect the dogs that are running and lure coursing to run the same speed and agility, because it doesn't apply. Comment says, it would seem that good obstacle independence is essential for cue timing, even if you could run with the dog. In my opinion, yes. I think if we focus on independent obstacles, so if you have independent contacts and weave poles, and you understand how dogs react to physical cues, and you understand the timing loop, and you understand the connection loop, you're going to make it really, really far without a whole lot of independent verbals, without having to run super fast. And of course, it really does depend on the types of courses that you want to be running and the goals that you have for your particular team. But independent obstacle performance and understanding how the dogs react to physical cues will get you a long ways. Do you have a day-to-day training sessions at home, short sessions that you pair with daily chores? Not really. I tend to do something with my dogs every day, but I definitely only go do formal agility once, maybe twice a week. And what I do there really depends on the dog. But probably 3 or 4 times a week, they're doing like just little living room training sessions where I'm focusing more on very specific skills. Like this week, so last week I did a USDAA at home trial with Shrek. So then this week his indoor skills are going to be around his start line and his listening skills and things like that. But as far as building obstacle focus, the living room skill that I would do the most, I guess, is sending to his pre-placed toy while I run away. I'm lucky in that I have a pretty large living room and my dogs aren't that big. So they can actually get kind of running in the living room, and they can practice moving towards a toy while I run away from it. So those types of things. But no, I don't. I try to plan my training sessions, but I don't have like any set, this is what I do on Monday, this is what I do on Tuesday. Is the motivation ever going to be comparable? Is that trainable, chasing critters versus agility, or is it just very individual? I mean, I guess if you want to reinforce with a squirrel, I don't think, no, I don't think, and I don't even think using a toy is comparable to using a squirrel or chasing a squirrel down, because I think we have to develop toy play. We have to develop toy skills as reinforcers. You don't have to develop a squirrel being a reinforcer. You don't have to develop the chase being a reinforcer. Like Shrek has never, ever caught anything, but he sure as heck knows that hunting is reinforcing. So I think it's a different level of motivation, period. Because I don't know. I have to really think about it to know and splice it apart and talk with smarter people than I am about it. But I think it's totally different. I don't think toy play is the same as chasing rabbits or chasing squirrels. It's a good question though. So I'll think about it some more. But is it comparable? Is it trainable? Maybe we can try and plug into that, right? I mean, I guess one could use go chase the squirrels as a reinforcer for agility. It's just harder to control, because if you are training agility somewhere where there aren't squirrels available, it's hard to use as a reinforcer. And if you can't call the dog off the squirrels, then it's harder to use as a reinforcer because you can't control it. So I don't know. Well, Celine, I suspect it's because Shrek is not, he's like mostly, he's not a real terrier. I don't know his deal. He got some very, very strong terrier genes and some that need some work. But he's almost like never. I think he's caught things in the field, but he's never caught things like he's caught like a shrew or something, but he's never caught anything really fast. Another advantage is identifying those critical points as you clearly cover in your handling class. Very useful for getting. Yeah, you have the walking. I assume that's what you mean. The kind of removing the running from it when you can only walk where you're needed is really highlighted so that you can get to the places that you want to be and when you want to be there. It helps a lot. Someone says walking is a big part of handling in NADAC. Absolutely. Because the courses aren't that big, right? So when you're handling at a distance, you don't need to run as many places. I have plenty of videos of running courses with Smack that I'm never running my fastest. I guess that's also why I don't view run faster as an answer, because I have so many videos where I'm not running my fastest because I don't need to. There are some parts of the courses where I do move into a walk. And so here comes some more passion. I got a lot of credit of being a good handler for being young and fast. And that's part of it, but I wasn't going as fast as I can, y'all. So that kind of to me means that's not why I was successful. Running fast helped, sure. I didn't have to worry as much about was I going to get there or not. I agree. It's a privilege that I am fast and agile and can be where I need to be, but so many runs, I am not running to my fastest potential. The courses aren't big enough. So another thing to think about. New classification for combination lure coursing agility courses. Now, so I think if the courses were to get bigger, where the dogs could truly be an extension, especially the big dogs, where the dogs could really just stretch out in the way that we're seeing. But really, go watch videos of lure coursing and then watch videos of agility. And the dogs are not running in the same way. It's different. It's a different style, and part of that is because there's not enough space in between the obstacles for the dogs to really get into that. Some of the small dogs, you can see it sometimes, but I still think it's because the speed is sometimes so dependent on the handler's ability to give them information. That's also a thing. If the dog is waiting to get the next piece of information from you, they're very rarely powerhousing forward. They're looking up at you like, hello, next piece of information, please. And then they'll swap. But they're swapping so much in and out that they usually develop like this halfway, not as fast as they can go, but maybe not slowing down, maybe not a trot, but maybe not a full gallop. They find this in between that's easy to move in and out of if there's breaks in the information. Does that make sense? I don't think I've ever articulated those thoughts. So sometimes when I'm spewing ideas, it doesn't always come out the way it sounds up here. I'm so glad I brought a second one. I think seeing the commitment and moving sooner, I could get where I want to be. Exactly. So again, back to those dog skills of, does your dog have the ability to commit and stay committed? And do you have the connection loop so you see it? You find that you don't actually have to run all that fast if you leave on time. When you wait, then you do have to run faster because you don't have as much time anymore, because you've lost out on that moment where your dog is moving in one direction and you should have been moving in the other. So if you wait, now you're kind of going with the dog instead of ahead of the dog. And now it's back into that, like, trying to race them. And I hate to say it, but we're usually going to lose. If I get any of my dogs out and I decide to race them, I'm probably going to lose, or I would like to lose. I want my dogs running faster than I can run because they're the ones being timed. Okay, so it makes sense. You've seen agility and lure being combined. I think it would be, I think it could be easy enough to like include tunnels and low jumps in lure coursing. It would scare the bejesus out of me to do anything other than that. Because obviously when you have a lure taking the dog to the obstacles, there's no handling involved. So that's another aspect, is that if we're using a lure machine to create the speed and the independence, the dog is getting all the information from chasing the lure. They're not focused on anything else except that. So there's that bit in the handling as well. So if you have a dog that you're trying to increase speed, you really want to be on time with that connection loop, timing loop, because any lapse in information, the dog has to go, what was that? Or if the information is not consistent, the dog has to go, and what was that again? I've never seen that before. And so anytime that they have to think about what was just said to them or shown to them, it's going to slow them down. Right. So when you can, okay, so exactly it. They're just chasing the lure. So there's no information for them to like process. They're not, I kind of, when we're talking about handling, it's like you're the GPS and the dog is driving the car. And if the GPS gives all of the information that's required in time, the dog can make smart choices about how they speed up, how they slow down, how they collect, how they extend, how they do everything. But if the GPS is like, oh yeah, turn here, the dog has no ability to prepare. So when it's a lure, the dog is hyper focused on that. There is no other information being taken in. So I just don't think, so doing a lure coursing agility combination might kind of teach the dog that the sight of agility obstacles is really exciting, but could also just teach the dog to look for the little white bunny on the course instead of my handling. So I don't know how I feel about it. Once a year, I'm sure it's fine. All the time, I'm not sure I would like it. Okay. I'll give you guys another minute or two to pop in your questions. I'm just going to tell you about a couple of things that are happening on Thursday. One, Thursday morning, registration for my obstacle focus workshop will open for registration. Okay, so that will open Thursday morning. I did a webinar last Thursday on balancing the obstacle and handler focus, and now there's going to be a workshop in May and a workshop in June. The workshop in May is on building obstacle focus, obstacle commitment. So workshop means there are working spots where you can submit your training and things like that. So that will open for registration. The other thing that I'm going to do on Thursday evening is my first live training session for my behind the scenes patrons. So if you've maybe seen it come across, or if this is your first live, maybe tell me if this is your first live. Is this the first time you've joined us? I do have a Patreon page for supporting the group. There are 2 tiers. The first tier is $5 a month. It's basically you are supporting the creation of all this content, and you are oh so appreciated, and you're going to have the ability to ask questions there, and questions from my patrons are what's driving all of the content. The behind the scenes patrons pay $20 a month. You get access to full training sessions. You get to ask about my training and things like that. And those patrons are getting an additional once a month live chat like this, but I'll be training dogs. And so on Thursday evening, 5:30, I'll be training the mechanics of collection. So the question was about how to teach the dog how to turn, and how to teach tight turns to the dog mechanically. So I've got a couple of terriers to train collection to. So I'm going to do that on Thursday. So if you are interested in becoming a patron, it is patreon.com/synergydogs. Okay. Yes, you did open a can of squirrels, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. Awesome. So I think that about wraps it up. If you're watching this after the fact, or you have more questions about this, bring them back to the group. If you are already a patron, thank you. You can also post your questions there about it, and I can follow things up and see where I can fill in some gaps for you. No, I am not at the trial this weekend. Shrek is starting his at-home trialing, and we'll see what he's like this fall. But so far, the first at-home trial was a good one. So we'll see if he's ready for a real trial in the fall. Okay. I release you all to the rest of your evening, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the group. I'll see you next week.